1944. You can tell it's 1944 because everybody's smoking a cigarette and everybody's wearing a hat.
And daytime drinking is totally acceptable.
And also, the one thing that when I rewatched this here about a month ago, the one startling moment in the thing that I thought was, oh no, this is going to make this movie suspect in my mind, and that's when Dana Andrews punches Vincent Price in the stomach in front of all sorts of witnesses, and figures that assault charges aren't going to be immediately brought upon his person. But 1944. Early in the year 1945, Laura received 4 Academy Award nominations. Best Cinematography, Black and White, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Mr. Clifton Webb, Best Director, Otto Preminger, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction and Interior Decoration, Black and White. On March 15th, 1945, Laura won an Oscar for Best Black and White Cinematography. The movie is based on a 1943 novel written by Vera Caspary, which stemmed from Caspary's 1939 Broadway play entitled Ring Twice for Laura. And the odd part about that title is Laura is spelled L-O-R-A, when it was a Broadway play in 1939. Joining me here is Zach and Laura Scott. And I have to be honest, when I was thinking about who might be on this panel here tonight, I said, I've got to have somebody by the name of Laura. It's fate that we put a Laura together with the movie. So, Laura Scott, how are you?
I'm good, and that really is the only qualification for me sitting up here, was that that's my name. But I do appreciate it. I actually had always wanted to see this movie and never saw it until this week. And the surprising thing for me, and I didn't tell Barry this, is the portrait of Laura. There was a portrait of my mother similar to that. And she and I look very, very similar. So I called her, I actually stopped the movie, called her, and talked to her about it because she had seen this movie. And she had never really thought about the portrait she has, that my grandparents had made of her when she was in between college and high school. And so, but that was a little strange for me to see that because it looked just like the one of my mother. But I really appreciated this movie. Again, I am not the movie expert on this panel, but looking at the costume design and the decorations were absolutely stunning. Made me wish I was the Laura in the movie. Just how beautiful it all was. And finding out more about the lead actress, that she had never studied acting. She learned by mimicking. So she was always, when she, the studios would actually, that was her training, they would play movies for her to watch, and that was her training. She would mimic the movie. She had no formal training whatsoever, and that was what she did. And when she was first starting out, she didn't like how she looked or sounded, so she would watch different kinds of movies so she could adapt to the character that she really wanted to play.
So this is the 3rd time I've seen the film. The first time I saw it was a couple of years ago, and I rewatched it after Barry asked me to join the panel about a month ago. So this is the first time I've seen it on the big screen, and like Laura, I was very drawn into the artistic nature of it, the designs, and the performances. It's a small but mighty cast, I think, is a good way to describe it. And the fact that Clifton Webb was the chosen one at the Oscar nominations doesn't surprise me either. He, I learned, had quite an interesting career. So he's about 54 years old here and had not made a film in almost 20 years. So he was somebody who did films during the silent era. Not many, but kind of faded away, did a little bit of theater, and he kind of a cast here by mistake, in a way, as Waldo Lydecker. So he really, in my opinion, kind of steals the show with his comic nature and his really funny lines and such. And the supporting cast of Vincent Price and Judith Anderson, I think, do a nice job as well. But to see it on the big screen in its glory, 75 years ago it was released, and 20 years ago it was put in the National Film Registry in 1999. So it's been 20 years since it joined that pretty prestigious ranking. So it's great to see it, and it's nice to see it return out here tonight too. Very impressive.
So one of the things, and again, I have such an appreciation for Vincent Price now, because I always knew him as, you know, the evil, older, you know, scary guy from the movies. And in here, he's this bumbling, you know, smooth-talking sort of, you know, gigolo. And again, I keep watching and going, is he just dumb, or is he playing dumb because he's so smart and he's just figured out a way to move through the system? But it gave me a whole new appreciation for him, which was nice.
And he's only 33 here, so you kind of see him. I know the first time I saw it, I didn't recognize that it was him until you hear his super famous voice. And he has said in interviews toward the end of his film career that Laura was the best film that he ever made as a whole, crediting his director for that as well. So interesting to see him in his youthful years before he sort of took on the 50s and 60s and the horror genre in more depth.
Picking up on a couple of things here. Thank you very
Sorry.
much. Laura mentioned the portrait of Gene Tierney, and that wasn't a painting. They took a photograph of Gene Tierney, and they applied some paint in certain areas so that there would be absolutely no mistaking that this was Gene Tierney in this image, which is kind of unusual. And it was a replacement also. This movie comes with a little baggage. That it started off with a different director. It was a man by the name of Ruben Mamoulian was originally given the task of directing the film. Mr. Preminger was just the producer. I say just, that's not a small job, but he was not given the opportunity by Darryl F. Zanuck to direct a film for several years. Zanuck and Preminger having a bit of an out in the late 30s. And they never spoke to one another for years. And Preminger discovered this Vera Caspary story novel and promoted it to Zanuck as a potential production that could be turned into a really good film, and Zanuck bought into it. But he was not about to let Preminger direct it, and assigned Mamoulian to the task. Well, when Mamoulian found out that there was still a little enmity between those two gentlemen, he figured, well, this is my bona fides to step in and maybe change some of the things that producer Preminger had introduced into the scheme of things. And that was indeed changing some of the sets. When the film finally started, and also it was a case of telling Preminger that Mamoulian was being made nervous by Preminger's presence, and would he please refrain from coming onto the set? Well, Preminger decided that the better part of virtue is to just leave this guy alone and let him make the movie. Eventually, and very soon, Preminger did get to see some of the dailies, some of the film that was actually being shot, and he was dumbstruck by the fact that this wasn't going the way he thought it would. He was finally seeing how the set was changed and how there was seemingly a lack of direction on the part of Mamoulian with the cast. Preminger thinking that most of the principals, including Clifton Webb, were just seemingly not too interested in what was being offered here script-wise. He made sure that Zanuck, who at that moment was in New York City instead of California, saw the dailies, and I guess Zanuck was upset too because he got in touch with Mamoulian and said, start over. I don't like the way this is going. Well, a couple of more days worth of dailies being viewed by Preminger and by Zanuck made up their mind that this was not going in the right direction. And Zanuck told Mamoulian, sorry, pal, you're out of a job. You're gone. And reluctantly, but he felt that Otto had earned the opportunity to get back into a director's chair and gave him the moment to direct the film. So it's interesting to see sometimes how these things evolve because also originally when Zanuck bought into doing this, he had different people in mind to play the parts. And originally, he kind of wanted Jennifer Jones to be Laura. He wanted an actor by the name of John Hodiak, who was a contract player at Fox, to be the detective Mark, and another contract player, Laird Krieger, to be Waldo Lydecker. Well, you can see that got changed. There was some sincere reluctance when the change took place as far as inserting Clifton Webb into the role of Waldo Lydecker. Zanuck didn't think that Clifton Webb was a talent that he wanted to add to his 20th Century Fox casting role. The word that was used in order to describe Clifton Webb by Darrell F. Zanuck was, Webb is puffy, poofy. And it was definitely thought that, and when I read that, I said, what the heck does that mean? All that refers to, as far as I'm concerned, is hair. But poofy in 1944, Hollywood referred to somebody who had homosexual tendencies. And apparently Zanuck did not want that to creep into the possible scheme of things. Ironically, Clifton Webb, after Laura, he gets himself an Oscar nomination, and he makes an additional like 18 movies. Guess who distributed every one of them? Not one of them going anyplace else but through the portals of 20th Century Fox, for the most part, under the direction of a guy by the name of Darrell F. Zanuck. So the movie business is very strange, and it has stories that sometimes make sense, and sometimes you figure how the heck do they get so involved? But at any rate, it was definitely a start for, or restart for Webb, whose real name was Webb Parmalee Hollenbeck. Webb was his first name. And Mr. Webb spent the preponderance of his life living with his mother. His mother lived to be 91 years old, and up until the day that she died, Webb lived with her. And there was talk that it was very strange to see a man who was 70 years old so upset by the death of his mother. And it affected him so sincerely that he only did one other film after his mother passed. And he died some 6 years after she did at age 91. And I believe he was like 82 when he died. But,
Yeah, just to add a little bit about Clifton Webb, he was watching the rushes, I read somewhere, of the beginning shooting of Laura, and very displeased with that intro scene into the bathtub, how he turned out. So I think it's kind of an iconic moment now. I definitely associate it with Laura, but he said, "My goodness, I look like Gandhi. What are we doing to my facial expressions and my makeup?" And you know, he's certainly a character as a performer, but he wasn't pleased with his look. But I think the scene turned out to be a great introduction to the picture for sure.
Well, it's a perfect example of who he was
Yes.
in that.
Yes.
And yeah, I was gonna say, if we had any questions in the audience, yes?
You mentioned at the beginning that there were about 5 or 8 minutes that were cut out,
Oh, yeah.
but added here.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yes.
3 minutes. What were they?
I noticed the one when she was doing her hair and the clothing. I don't think that was on the DVD that I borrowed.
that's the sequence. It's the sequence that shows Webb
Like molding her.
or Waldo really kind of grooming her
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the situation that he wanted her to grow into. And I guess it was thought in 1944, with the war going on, that seemingly this sort of success may have struck people the wrong way. I don't know, that it seemed like kind of a lame excuse for excising what amounted to like 3 minutes worth of footage, in which she indeed goes from being somebody who's trying to get his signature on a pen advertisement to what she became and had the success that she was indeed having at the time that she was murdered, or at least you thought she was murdered.
I think it actually made the movie make more sense, because that was something I thought was strange. And she was, what, 22 or 23, and all of a sudden she's an ad executive.
Yeah.
So that actually, it helped tell the story. I knew he helped her because he had said he introduced her to people and he agreed to be part of that ad campaign. But it showed it much more of how she went from point A to point B. And if you actually listen, he said they celebrated her 22nd birthday at the
Yep.
restaurant. Now, they didn't
Yep.
say how long ago that was, but he had met her 5 years before that, so she was 17
Exactly.
when they first met. But she was the most advanced-looking 17-year-old that I've ever seen when she
It was the
tried-
hats.
It was the hats. When she tried to get him to sign the ad campaign. But again, it sort of showed that how she would have let him guide her and tell her who to like and not like if she met him at 17 and he's this older gentleman that's helping her along the way. So, or sort of creepy when you say it like that, okay.
It frames the narrative of their relationship very nicely to have those extra few minutes.